right, guys. I'm back. I've been missing in action for like a month.
I have no idea. Where were you, though?
Man, things happened to start school. Well, Michael will know this. School started. I decided, to shift my priorities a little bit to make sure that I had enough time for all of these things. Now that I have my routine sorted, I decided, let's start back the podcast. And the topic of today was one of the reasons I came back. It was because I am very passionate about education in general. I've been teaching for the last year. After working hours, almost about average 2 classes a day I've been teaching. And, I really got an insight into what I would want the education system to look like. There were things I liked about CXC and CAPE. There were things I didn't like about CXC and CAPE. And joining me here is to add a third dimension. So we're talking about CSEC, CAPE, and SEA.
Yes.
Now, why do I have one of my closest friends, Michael Lezama, on set?
I know nothing.
to talk about an issue like this, Shouldn't I have Dr. Nyan Gadsby on?
Why would you want to have
If you're hearing this, right, you're my MP, right? Mrs. Gadsby or Miss Gadsby. I would love to have you on. So anybody, if you all know her, please let her know that I'd love to be in contact with her. But anyway, let's get into it.
Let's dig into the details.
People already, so I talked about being missing in action. Now let's get into it. So for people who don't know, I've said this before, but you're living under a rock, right? CXC is in shambles. Reason being, and I'm actually kind of surprised people are so shocked.
I think like the COVID like just emphasized everybody's emotions on thing though.
Yeah, but like when you decide, so okay. Let's give some context. So maybe some international people are listening to this, or maybe in the future, this podcast becomes popular.
You're overestimating this podcast, there you do.
I just give it some context, right? Look, you have to live in hope, right?
It's 2020, I just said.
Yeah, I mean, so much hopes for this year. Anyway, so what happened was because of the coronavirus, the COVID-19, a lot of educational institutes and testing institutions had to shift priorities. So on the SAT side, they canceled a lot of exams. But CAPE and CSEC, it would not have been so straightforward for CXC to cancel those exams. So what they resorted to, for those who don't know, is to make the exam shorter or make it, I guess, more convenient for the circumstances. And to do that, they got rid of paper twos. They got rid of paper twos, which are long papers, long answer questions. And the entire exam was based off of the other 2 aspects, which were student-based assessments, which are like projects that you do during the school term, and paper ones.
Written assessment.
Yeah, and the paper ones, which multiple choice. So when they announced that early in the year, Michael, did you have like any like initial reaction when you heard that? Or?
Dog, as far as like I was concerned, dog, like I finished exams, I really wasn't. I'm sorry about you guys. I know some of y'all are really upset, but I really wasn't interested. Dog. After I got my results, like I was really focused on my next stage in life, dog. Like I had school and I had work and I had like other extracurricular activities.
Yeah,
I wasn't interested.
I get that, but what the initial reaction for my students was, as soon as it was announced, I got endless messages from them saying, so people want to know, this is crazy because you and I both know paper ones equals repeats, right? Yeah. So my initial reaction was, wow, maybe CXC is going to set a brand new exam, because I think...
Not a chance.
No, but I honestly think multiple choice is an excellent way to test people. SATs do it, and SATs is a metric that people use to accept thousands of students, hundreds of thousands of students into the US every year. So clearly multiple choice can work as a viable metric to measure people's,
But the SATs, they don't repeat their exams.
So that's the thing. That was my main concern, that they would have to set a brand new exam to make the exam make sense. But in the back of my mind, I had a feeling they wouldn't, and they didn't. All right?
Just out of curiosity, SATs, they create a new exam system. They got rid of some stuff. He said that.
What SAT did, they made it a little easier. So from what I understand, the the second math section, which used to be calculator oriented, so you had to use a calculator to solve the second section of math. They got rid of that. You can't solve the second section without a calculator.
Okay.
I mean, people could say it's being dumbed down, but at the end of the day, because it's marked on a curve, you just have to do that much better. But getting back to the CXC wildness, now after people have done the exams, and as you know, the exams had no new questions. It was just like the exam that we expected. When the results came out, people were very upset. Why? Because people who were supposed to get ones got twos, and vice versa. You know, because if you and CXC and Cape also mark on a curve, right? And I am a guy named Kerwin Springer. I know a lot of y'all know him. He had a very excellent visualization of this, where he said, when you test via the three metrics, which is paper 1, paper 2, and SBA, there's a more even distribution of marks, where you can you group the top so much percent as grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and whatever. But when you get rid of the paper 2s, which is the most accurate
measurement
performance, right? Well, for CXC, what happens is that the curve shifts to the right, shifts to the higher end. Why? Because everybody's getting total on their multiple choice.
It wouldn't be the actual IAs, because the paper 1s and the paper 2s have the repeats, but they can't have a repeat of IA.
Yeah.
Or they do detect a repeat, or they see some similar information, they would point it out.
Well, the IA, apart from I guess pure math, which is the exam, an exam is an IA. The other IAs were given more weight, and from what I understand, teachers or CXC marked everyone's IAs now. They used to mark only certain students. Yeah. Like the highest, the lowest, and the middle. Sometimes they neglected schools completely. Like sometimes they just don't need to mark certain schools. And what ended up happening is that if a school wasn't getting accurate feedback about their IAs in the past, they were not able to accurately teach the students how to do the IA properly going or in this year. And also time was cut short to do their SBAs and their IAs. So it was just a lot of wildness. So you had inconsistencies in the SBA, which weighted a lot more than people bargained for. And then on the other end, the other metric, paper 1s, which is all repeats, just as usual. All right, so that's just like a basic outline of what was going on there. And now CXC is in hot water. Everybody and their uncle is complaining about it.
Well, not only CXC and Keeper is SCA too.
SCA as well. We're gonna get to that a little later. But SCA, as you were telling me, has been under inspection for very long.
Everybody hates SCA. They have been hating on SCA for a while. It's not really SCA is the external exam system, the transition between primary school and secondary school education.
So yeah. So these examinations, I think about examinations, why it's so important is because it's supposed to reflect a student's capabilities. And if you mess up or if you don't set an exam properly, you don't give an accurate representation of people's capabilities, and people make a lot of decisions off of it. So for SCA, how good you do on SCA determines what secondary school you go to. And in Trinidad, that's huge. That's a huge
SCA
deal.
is probably the hugest exam in the Caribbean.
Arguably.
And it means a lot to everybody though. I think it had cases where people would commit suicide before SCA. Yeah, it's crazy.
And also at the Cape and CSEC level, what the amount of passes that you get will determine, what kind of job you get. I mean, the thing with CXC and Cape or CSEC and Cape is that people tend to repeat it much more, to make sure that they get better grades and stuff. So I mean, even adults could do CSEC and Cape. But there's something about getting into the secondary school age dreams that's so massive.
It's more so not the results you get, but the prestige associated with the secondary school education. Because they view going to the prestige schools as something that will determine the rest of your life, though. What happens for the rest of your life, what kind of job, as I said before, what kind of job you get. And it's not so much a focus on the academic performance. It's what kind of people in the past has the school produced. Doctors, lawyers, businessmen. And that prestige associated with the secondary schools is what drives it. it what creates the most amount of anxiety, you know, surrounding the SE.
I get that. But yeah, so literally, like exams mean like a lot. I want to talk
should.
about, yeah, I mean, yeah, fair enough, you know. But I want to talk a little bit about paper ones in general, or just the idea of multiple choice, because we try to use it as a major metric, and like I watched the press briefing CXC had with like journalists from throughout the Caribbean, and you know, there's little accountability for what CXC is doing, and I know some countries are having, I guess, lawsuits brought forward on CXC, which I think was coming for a long time.
You've been waiting.
Since I've been doing exams, I've always wondered, how could CXC get away with this? How could CXC get away with bringing repeat questions and then claiming that their exam, you know, has this high standing? Like, you ever heard someone, I guess, from the US say CAPE is weighted heavier than other exams because it's so hard? The syllabus is difficult, but the exam is BS.
No.
The exam is BS. You can BS IAs and SBAs. The teacher can hand you IAs and SBAs, like, you know, right? Imagine that. So people, they could BS that. You can BS paper ones by literally 99% of the questions that come in your exam came before. That's insane. And on top of that, paper twos, from my experience, is also becoming repeat.
It's not supposed to be doing that, but it actually is.
And imagine that, like, I don't know what standing CAPE has and CSEC has internationally, but I know it's a lot. And I think that CXC has been, they've been lying.
We've been counted as one of the the top-notch education systems in the world, but I don't know. I really don't know.
If the metric that measures our education system is messed up, like CXC and CAPE, then we're literally lying to the entire world. We're lying to ourselves that we know what we're doing when we're doing our exams, you know. And I just feel like it's a downward spiral, that if we don't address the problem, then there's no like improving, you know. And I think there are lots of problems that stem from such a broken testing system.
Yeah, I think that stems from like even at the primary school level though, because there's such an emphasis to get into the prestige schools. It's like a rat race. So you have prestige secondary schools, so that means you're going to have prestige primary schools that get you into the prestige secondary schools. And what it does, it sets you up. The system, they focus less on the teaching and rather on the continuous practice
and how to do the exam.
And how to do the exam, you know, what techniques to use, what, and it's not really bad, but like they focus more on the techniques and actual teaching.
Yeah,
and that's a tragedy though.
And even at the secondary school level, I've went to lessons where they're like, all right, they try to make predictions on what comes in the exams, they give you techniques, because in SA we know there are techniques to solve everything. If we have a question and they give you this and this variable, this is exactly how you go forward doing it. They're not really explaining like what's the rationale behind these steps in maths. It's more like this. If you do it this way, you're gonna get it right every time. And this is they do
when
the same
in doubt,
thing.
you see.
But they do it a lot in chemistry. They do it a lot in math, where they give you strategies as opposed like more like a rational way of solving problems. What else do I have to talk about? Because like this is a huge deal for me.
He's been waiting.
One thing, yeah, I've been waiting because
that's why it took so long.
Yeah, like why? How did we let them get away with this? And that question really struck me. Like, why are we letting them get away with this? I'm sure I'm not the only person to think that CXC and CAPE are on real nonsense. You know, it couldn't have only been me. And you know what? I realized, if you're doing an exam, who are you to hold somebody accountable if you're not paying for it? We don't pay for our exams. Our government, and I think, our government foots the bill for our CXC and CAPE results, CSEC and CAPE results. Who are we, as people who are getting exams and education for free? Who are we to complain? You know? It's not our money being directly forked out. And then if we put the burden on the government to solve our problems, I don't see that working out either. And I think, so I've been hearing stories, this is hearsay, and I'm not going to call any names, that Trinidad is also filing a lawsuit. But it's coming from the people itself. And I think that if we had put more accountability or put more, let the citizens see what CXC and CAPE does, if we had put I guess the parents, in a more of a position of responsibility, that lawsuit would have gotten filed years ago. But because it's free, and we're grateful that it's free, we try not to complain, right? So that brings me to like one of my solutions. I think to the problem is, I think at bare minimum, after certain, because I don't want to say that everybody should pay for exams, but I think that the vast majority of people should, unless like given like if they give evidence that they literally cannot afford it at all.
Like a means test for GATE.
Yeah, probably
Yeah,
something like that. Right, where you could tell people that tell the government or tell CXC I can't afford my exam, and therefore if I could get a waiver for my exams, and that works for SATs as well, right? Exam systems, they give concessions for people who can't afford it. But I think that if we start charging people, or if we start paying for our own exams, then when the results don't come out in our favor, when the results don't make sense like this,
we have every right to go on.
We have every right, because that's our money we put in there. I mean, we could argue we pay taxes, but it's paying taxes.
But we do pay money to query the results as well.
That pisses me off. What I've been telling people who want to query, I've been saying it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Like, do not query.
Don't query.
Like, save your little change. Buy a little gold chain as a watchdog. Do not query, dog.
Or repeat it the next year with your own money or something that you would have saved from not querying. Because, this year especially, querying makes no sense because now CXC released something saying they don't remark, they recount, right? And how do you mark or how do you count paper ones? That's a machine doing it. You telling me you paying $30 for a machine to count over again? Machines don't make mistakes like that, right? So it doesn't make sense for you to waste your $30 querying each subject, right? And on top of that, what I've been telling people, pool your money together with everybody else. If you pool all the query money together, Michael, you could sue CXC twice. You could get the best lawyer in the world to sue CXC. I'm telling you, people will fork out that money. If you want to query 5 subjects, that's what 5 3s 15, $150.
But then it's like if CSEC is a private organization, shouldn't it be held to accountability?
That's what I'm saying, but
that's why we could sue them.
But if we only allow the government to hold them accountable, first of all, we don't know what kind of relationships they have with the government, right? Whether or not the government can sue them. Maybe they're in their pockets. I'm not very conspiratorial, but I honestly think that the people would raise more of a concern to sue CXC than the government, because we have to, or we should riot and tell the government to sue them, which I think some other countries did. Their students came out to protest. Why didn't Trinidad do that? Because we don't pay for exams.
But that history of not paying for education really was rooted in like the colonial times, because started off with the I think it was the introduction of Eric Williams, where he wanted to make the transition from primary schools to secondary schools more accommodating for people of color and people of a certain ethnicity, because what it was before, I think it was the college exhibition.
Yeah.
And people could only...
My grandfather got that.
Yeah, people could only enter you had to get a scholarship to enter a secondary school,
Yeah.
You had to pay because, these schools were owned by the church, and they wanted... the majority of people who would have went there would have been white Christian males of the elite class. So, with the creation of new secondary schools and the creation of the new exam called the common entrance exam, it changed the whole dynamic. It was more state owned, although the land was owned by the church, and they had the Concordat coming after. The state owned the majority of the schools available. So there was a better transition from the primary schools to the secondary schools.
And more like, let's say, a fairer chance for everybody.
A fairer chance for everybody.
So then why did we change common entrance?
Because there's still problems. There's still problems with the amount of prestige schools available. Because it's not really a focus on the academic performance. It's who went that school, and I want to get my child to go to that school. What makes a school prestigious is the total amount of successful people it produces. So the alma mater, the alma mater produces. So what you have, although it had a drastic increase in the amount of secondary schools, and it had like a large amount of junior secondary schools available, they didn't have that associated prestige. So there was a limited amount of prestigious schools for people to go to, and the rat race mentality was still there. You know, prestigious school, prestigious secondary schools, prestigious primary schools. It's still a lot of anxiety and competition to get into them. So, and I guess that's why people was wanting to change the dynamics of the syllabus, you know, from the common entrance to the SCA, but it didn't get rid of the rat race mentality.
So, what kind of subjects did the common entrance?
Entrance. I have no book here. The common entrance, you had MCQs, English, maths, social studies, science. Yeah. I don't know if you heard me. English, math, social studies, science, and the continuous assessment. And they said the problem with this, although they tried to get rid of the fact that the exam wasn't accommodating enough of people's individual abilities, and they created a large variation of testable metrics. The problem with this now was that it was too much things to study for. It was information overload, and that added to the anxiety of getting into a prestigious school was just.
And it's not just like the anxiety. Like, anxiety is part of life, but it's the age at which you put in these people under stress. You know,
you can't have like primary school children committing. What the hell is that, bro?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of transitioned. And what do you think is the rationale behind going from all those different subjects to only math, English, creative writing? And do you think that I guess solved the rat race problem?
One, I was fairly comfortable with the math, English. Speaking personally, I can't tell if it accommodated for the general public, but it didn't get rid of the rat race because the rat race wasn't associated with the actual syllabus. It was associated with the prestigious schools and the availability of them. So you had prestigious.
You told me something like this recently, where the demand for prestige schools is way too high.
Yeah, the demand for the prestige school is way greater than the supply of the prestige schools.
Facts.
So, but that's a weird thing, eh? It's that way for everything in society. You know, it have limited amount of jobs. It have limited amount of resources. Who's going to get them? It should be based off meritocracy. But then the idea of equity and equality comes in.
So let's go down that route a little bit. So we're saying now that there's an overwhelming amount of people that want to go to a very small amount of secondary schools, right? And therefore, we've changed from, I guess, mastering all those subjects or trying to go to get a scholarship. Talk a little bit about the Concord Act, because the Concord Act kind of helps, I guess, that equity a little bit. Talk a little bit about
it. When there was the growing nationality, I think it was the African dog, I can't remember the name of the movement dog. But basically when Eric Williams came into power and he wanted to make more available, accommodation for people of color and people of a certain background, there was a large increase in schools, but the church still owned the land. And this church, if you're going to create schools, if we own the land, we want to determine at least the 20%, like 20% of the people that come in, we want to determine who we bring in, you know? And some could argue that messes with the idea of equality also, because it's not really based on your individual merit, but immutable characteristics that you really can't change. But at least it's a real tricky thing, because it's only fair if the church owns the land. They get to decide who comes.
And my thing is, getting rid of churches, I guess, power in the education system will only lead to more harm. Meaning that some of the best schools in the country are denominational schools. They're run by religious organizations. And I fear that moving away from that, but I think there's potential, right? But I think that the potential is small and would be reliant on individuals for government schools to prosper, right? I think that having religious organizations focus on education would have a better success rate. And that's what we see. You know, the convents, the colleges, right? They are held in, like, I guess, higher prestige than a lot of other schools.
What do you think determines that, like, accounts for the higher performance in the non-national schools?
I'm not too sure, because I honestly think that the government schools are catching up, at least some of them. I think QRC is an excellent example of a government school that's doing well. But I feel as though there's something about a religious organization believing that as part of their beliefs, a proper education is vital, right? And I think that that's a larger driving force to having a well-run school than a government who thinks that they just owe people education, right? The passion behind it, I think, is lacking, and that's why I said I think that the main way for government schools to gain prestige is for individuals to come in with that passion, right? And I think that is something, I guess, I mean, it could happen, right? But I think that that's something that's lacking a bit. Now, let's talk about this. We went to Fatima, right?
Probably.
Yeah. We went to Fatima College, one of the best schools in the country.
Really?
Right? But we both came from public schools. You went to Newtown, I went to Sacred Heart Boys.
Inferior.
We won't argue that today because facts don't support your claim.
Right? I'll give a computer right there.
Let me not do that. But anyway, we came into Fatima, right? And something that struck me was I came with about 4 other people from my school. How many people did you come with?
About 4 to 5.
Right.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem so. What I want to do now is compare private versus public primary school education. So let's say there are more public schools than private schools. If 5 people from 100, that's too much. Say 5 people from 20 different public schools get in to Fatima. That's what, 5, 6, that's 100 people. I said, 20, right? 100 people. So that's 100 people from public schools. But on the private school side, let's say 4 private schools get in 15 each, right? Let's see, what's our math? That's 60, right? It seems at the surface that public school education, if you just look at the numbers, it seems that public school education is getting more people in than private school education. However, that success rate in the private schools is leaps and bounds beyond what's going on in the public schools, right? Do you see that? Do you think that that's a form of, I guess, inequality in the system? Do you think that there's any way to work around that? Because from how I see it, private schools have mastered SCA. They get it down to science. Arguably, it's because they're paying for something and they expect a result, right? Do you think that that's a relevant problem, that maybe socioeconomic class could determine what school you get into? And what do you think is a way around it?
I'm not entirely sure what the statistics around that actually though. You said that there's majority of the schools are public schools, and therefore they will have a larger population of people entering the prestigious schools. But how much of those individuals from the public schools are in like the top 1% of people performing in the SCA?
I mean, to me, that sort of top 200 thing is sort of like useless. Like, after you do SCA and your name is in the newspapers, you don't hear about those people again.
No, you don't.
Yeah. So my thing is, like, it's all well and good to do excellent in SCA. I would argue doing excellent in Cape and CSEC is much more relevant. But, and this is something else I want to separate. I don't think all public schools are equal, in that there's some public government schools and then some public denominational schools. Some public schools that are run by religious organizations. And I think they tend to do better. For example, the Hindu schools dominate SCA, right? I don't think they're private. I mean, you all write down in the comments if they're private or not. I'm not too sure. I don't want to comment on that.
You'll find out after.
Yeah, we'll find out. But they have strong religious ties, and they tend to do excellent in SCA. Meanwhile, on the flip side, the government run.
I really think it's the consolidation of the institutions, because it have within the idea of getting um, the idea, okay, so they have the family, then they have the church. So how is that mixed together? And then they have the idea of being a good person in the family and the church, and then being a excellent or an exceeding individual in the sphere of education. And those three institutions could tie together. So I think within religious, not more so religious schools, but religious families that send their children to religious schools have that synchronization of the importance of all the institutions tying into one. So I think it's more of a value thing rather than just happening by chance. That could possibly be it.
I could see that. I could see that. And that kind of ties into my point that the religious organization, like, they want to, as you said, that connection between the institutions. The religious organizations see the importance in education, and I think they see it more tangibly than the political sphere of things, the political institution, right? Anyway, so let's see if we could figure out, like, what could be a solution to SA, right? Because, so we see, I guess, I saw, in my opinion, from anecdotal evidence, let's pretend I'm right. If I'm wrong, you'll tell me, right? Let's pretend I'm right, that I think that your economic standing can determine what school you go to, right? Because you're paying for the best, you're paying for education in general. Nobody else pays for education like private schools. If you pay, you expect results. You expect that your investment paid off.
And if they'll get you ISPS, so the thing as well.
Exactly. If you have enough money to send these people to the public primary schools, private primary schools, you just send them Maple Leaf, ISPS, and all those other schools. And this is something I want to point out. It's like 100% of people, I guess, with money or in higher socioeconomic classes, 100% of them either go a prestige school or a private secondary school. Okay, these are very, I guess, rounded off numbers, right?
Rational.
Right? And they're like next to 0% of people in those same classes going to the other non-prestige schools. Now, I have some friends who've went to those schools and done very well for themselves, right? So I'm not saying that they're worse schools or okay. On the metric of performance and exams, I guess they are worse schools. But turning out good students, that's a very different conversation, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you don't see people of a certain socioeconomic class ending up in non-prestigious schools.
Performance schools, yeah. So that could be the tie between, socioeconomic class and actual academic performance. But and if you think about it, it's kind of obvious to draw the ties. You have the money to pay for certain social capital that will give you a better chance at performing. It's not only academics. It'd be to perform in school. Let's say you have to be a well-rounded individual. You have to have an integrated sense of self. That confidence to actually ask questions and things. It doesn't happen within the system of school. It happens at an earlier age, at the family.
No, I wish that there was a way to determine that, or to at least get an insight into the individual as a whole from SA level. One of the things I was thinking about is maybe we should allow secondary schools to have a greater say in who attends their school. That's kind of like, I guess, going back to the past where, if you could afford the school, you come. But I don't think we should. I think that it may happen, but I don't think you should look at the economic status of individuals. But if a school is able to not be handed a batch of students by the government who did SAA and say, all right, these are the people who have to go to your school. Maybe if there was more of a conversation to get to know these students, right? Because these people are coming to your school for the next 7 years.
It's kind of like scholarships, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like these scholarships.
They decide who comes to their school. It's not just academic.
Yeah, but what do you think with these scholarships is that people who don't get scholarships, if you want to attend the school, they have to pay, right? So we're trying to get rid of that. So there is still a socioeconomic divide when you're dealing with scholarships, right? But what I was thinking is that if 20% list is kind of like what I'm thinking about, right? Where the school chooses. So, correct me if I'm wrong as I go along with this. The 20% list or the Concord Act, they're one and the same?
Yeah.
Right? It's saying the school is allowed to choose 20% of its student population coming in. All right. I think that that's a very good initiative. Maybe we could extend that percentage.
We don't want to get like 100% because then it will have people, they would first of all, they would describe the criteria of the people they want to come inside their schools. And then you'll have a fixed, the criteria will have to be fixed, and then it will be a specific individuals getting into the school and specific individuals not getting into the schools. And then you can look at that and say, what? Inequality, that's injustice.
Fair enough. Because then there's limited accountability, because if each school has their own metric, it's kind of difficult. Well, yeah, no transparency. They could choose what they want and not tell us. I mean, so I say kind of provides a reasonable metric for us to say, all right, it makes sense why this person attended this school, that school.
Insofar as it's public, it's a public school, it allows for more accommodation of diverse individuals. But I don't know, it's real tricky.
Now, something I was hearing is that maybe we should change the age at which you have to do SA, or change the age at which you have to go from a primary education to secondary education, right? So something I think it's happening in Barbados. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So their transition from first school education to second school education is at the Form 3 level, or they want to move toward that. They want to have Form 3 be a SCA time, right? I don't know what that would look like in Trinidad, because I think that our infrastructure is too small to accommodate 3 more years of schooling. But what I think it allows for is a little more maturing of the students. And I think that at the Form 3 level, you see all those subjects I listed for common entrance, you can test all of those things and get a better picture of, I guess, the capabilities of the students.
And we do 8 subjects in Form 1, so.
True. It's not 8 though, 12. I remember.
You sure?
It's 12. It's 12. And so here's the thing. Why are we saying that they're getting overloaded? In fact, we do 12 subjects. Is it 12?
I don't think
because okay.
Wait, I think it's 12
not
to 13.
To toot my own horn, but I topped 8 subjects in Form 1. So I know that it's not just 8. It has to be around 12 to 13.
So what happens in that transitionary period from
So are they telling me that we can't do more than Maths, English, Creative Writing at Standard 5 level, but Form 1 level we can do 13 subjects and be tested?
Well, that's what I think the problem, from the transition from common entrance to the actual C exams, wasn't really a problem with the syllabus and the large, although it is a problem. Some people could see it as a problem. The main problem was the availability of the prestigious schools. I mean, I could tell you personally that the amount of subjects I did for C wasn't a problem. It really wasn't a problem.
Same. And now, away from I guess the academic side, but I think we are suffering from a lack of identity as a country, and I think a lot of it has to do with the style of exams that we have. We don't test social studies. We learn social studies. We learn who our presidents, prime ministers were in up to Standard 3. But in the back of my mind,
Arawaks and the Indians.
Yeah, in the back of our mind, we knew we're not going to be tested on it. And I always used to feel as though what I was learning when I'm doing science and social studies, I always felt as though that's useless. Because I'm not going to be tested on it in the only exam that matters, in SEA. Right? So I feel as though we should incorporate some aspects of that, maybe a Caribbean studies for primary school students, sort of way maybe to increase our identity a little bit.
Probably they could mash that with a kind of continuous assessment, so that they will test you on a diverse set of subjects, and you have over a period of time you could perform well in varying amount of subjects. And what they could do, instead of creating a high emphasis on prestigious subjects, based on your performance in certain subjects in the continuous assessment, you could have schools that are heavily associated with those performances in those particular
subjects.
So it's a kind of streamline into
right.
Yeah.
That's something interesting, because we just see secondary schools as secondary schools, and I think that, especially at the university level, so the prestige of certain schools kind of shifts. So what happens is that certain schools are known for engineering, certain schools are known for liberal arts, right? And I think that if we get some secondary schools on a level where they can dominate in specific, I guess, certain streams, I think that could, I guess, improve or increase the prestigiousness. But I think that in order to do that, we'll need more mature students to know which schools they want to pursue, or which subject streams they want to pursue. And I think maybe a later exam or maybe a more diverse exam is the way to go. But so this is something I've been thinking about. Maybe if we model the college education system a little bit, make our secondary school education system a little similar to that, in that it's much more merit based than anything. When I have to apply for my universities, they have to get to know me as an individual. In fact, I sent my transcript recently. I sent my transcript after I started attending the school. They didn't know how I was doing through my schooling years, academic wise. I mean, they knew like my general accomplishments, but they didn't have my transcript from all 7 years of school, So that's interesting. How they kind of watch the individual holistically. And I think that's something secondary schools could look.
Is that you have to have a balance? Is that strange balance between determining the kind of people you want coming into your school and then not really ostracizing people people who don't have those qualities, let's say, because if they get to decide what kind of people get into the school,
I think it'll be a rabbit hole because.
So what if they had like certain standards for what you could accept into a school and certain standards for what you can't accept?
I think that'll be so. What I was thinking that if we give more power to secondary schools, just like universities, to deciding who comes to their school, what I think could happen is it could turn into a sort of you want people like of a certain socioeconomic class coming in, because what would happen? What you were outlining is one of the reasons why the schools get prestige is because they turn out certain individuals, right? Those certain individuals will have their children come to the school, and alumni, from my experience, feel as though that their next set of children ought or deserves to be in their school, right? So I think that there's a danger in that you could make secondary schools sort of cliquish. Right? If you only allow the schools to take in who they want, who are you going to prefer? People who came, like your parents, right? I think parents have a huge say in who gets in at secondary school level, from primary to secondary school, because you can't judge an 11, 12-year-old boy or girl at 11, 12. So I think what can turn into is that who links will be everything, right? And then what the status of your parents are.
But then, dog, the whole idea of getting to know the child personally, dog, at 12 years old, they're like... Yeah. What the child know about himself at 12?
That is true.
No, we could barely write essays at 12. You want to write me to write a personal essay about myself, dog.
Something else. If we were to have an exam at Form 3, right? People would be like, what I would look like. We actually do. We have NCSE.
Dog, what is that, dog?
It's the most useless exam.
Jimmy, pull that up.
Let me pull that up. Let me see. Hey, I think I pull up an article on it. Oh no. All right, look at it. Right. Yo, I don't know if this exam is still going on, because this exam is laughable. Let me tell you something. When I did this exam, my teacher gave me all the answers for my Spanish exam. He would read out the passage and then he would ask a question, and obviously, like, first of all, absenteeism for this exam was high. Nobody cared about the exam to come. And then
I don't even remember the exam, though.
Yeah, most people stayed home. And then when you got your slip back in Form 5.
What's it, though?
with the results. It was
NCSE?
Yeah, it was hilarious. Like, they gave back all the results for NCSE, and people were like, what was this again?
Yeah, no,
But watch this. They're testing, there is a national curriculum for these subjects: language arts, maths, science, social studies, performing arts, Spanish, IT, and PE. Oh gosh, look at all those things. Agricultural science. Oh yes, I remember that. Industrial arts, home economics. Now, if you want to test somebody at Form 3, I think that if we use this metric, we would much better be able to judge. Or like, if this were SCA instead, and people did SCA in Form 3, I think it would be real value. But then again, I don't know what the logistics would look like.
Mm.
And I think NCSE is a huge waste of time. What other exams are a waste of time?
Dog.
Primary school. You remember primary school? What exams we used to do in forms 1 and 3? And what exams we used to do in 2 and 4? Tell me if you remember. National test. You remember national test? Where you would have 1 year you do math and English. The next year you do science and social studies.
What is that? No, what?
We used to, I'm telling you. Oh, let me X this off.
That's not what we drinking, that dog.
Yes, you don't remember national test?
No.
Michael,
No,
you're lying to me.
I don't know what national test is.
Every year we would have an exam from form 1 to 4. That's not SEA and not end of term exams. It would like be randomly during the week. Like they would tell us before, okay, by the way, next week is national test. You have here's I guess what do you call it? A permission slip to be able to do the exam, and you do the exam. I'm telling you. We have like all these random useless, well, quote unquote useless examination infrastructure in place that we just don't use, or a waste of time. NCS. Hilarious. But look, on the surface of this, watch, right? All Form 3 students, must write NCSE. Now, I don't know if this is still happening, but the infrastructure is definitely, I could find this website. The only thing is that they told us, when we were doing the exam, they told us, you can use this as sort of a qualification.
Serious?
Yeah.
To get into what?
Exactly. It's useless now. Because it's caught between SCA and CSEC, the 2 major exams. SCA determines.
I know, but it takes it serious anyway.
Yeah, because there's no like consequences for doing good or bad in NCSE, especially because CSEC is 2 years later and it's like way up there in requirements. But maybe we should revisit this. This could help us. I think that there's the same concept in the US, where there's like I guess like a primary school, and then like a middle school, which would be forms 1 to 3, and then a high school, which would be like form 4 and 5, or form 5, 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6, and that's why they're like 1 year ahead of us, right? So they would go into university like 1 year before we do. But no, this is.
You think we should have that though, like a longer primary school?
I think it's definitely a thought, mostly because I honestly think maths and English is not a good enough criteria to judge what school someone deserves to go to. Especially if your talents don't lie in maths and English, then you're in hot water.
Like I heard a lot of people complaining about that. Like my last boss, she was telling me about like how her children really weren't on maths and English, and even at a secondary school level, they did like her daughter did a weird mix of subjects. So it really have, unfortunately, because they need to narrow down on the subjects you will be doing in the future and your areas of expertise. There are some people who, and I think we mentioned this before, who be left out and left to fall out through the cracks.
For sure. And that's just where you gotta try and, what we call it, boy, fill those cracks. Put some foam in the cracks. Make sure nothing slip through. Try and make everything fair. But
that's the thing though, like academic performance really isn't everything though. Like there's so much more.
That's what I'm thinking. If a school, if me as a secondary school, if I want, let's say I want a better football team, I can't choose students that are good in certain sports because I only have SCA to judge people off, right? But and I think that would offer a lot. I honestly think that our sports people fall through the cracks in all examination spaces. Let me just like outline it. In SCA, they don't care about how good you are in any sport to get you into a school. It will help you probably get a transfer later on, right? But I think that grooming them from younger, if you have a talent in a sport and you need education to help you along that course, I think that a school should be able to say, yo, I want you in my school. And then scholarship level, there's no scholarships for sports students. The government provides none, right? I think that's a problem as well.
We talk about Noons, Noons deserve the scholarship.
I got a scholarship, I didn't accept it. I think that money should go to someone else, and I think that, but I don't want it to go to the next person who did the next best in Cape. I don't think I don't think that's fair. Especially, and here's the thing, And this is why CXC should get sued. We judge our scholarships based on CXC's metrics, right? But now since CXC has like made the exam pay to win, basically, where you can rat your way to getting a 1 in any subject by just doing past papers, like drilling techniques as opposed to content. I think that for me to base scholarships, millions of dollars worth in money off of CXC exam, utter BS. That's why I had a scholarship conversation with someone who's on it before, Alexandria, and what I was telling her is that we should have different metrics. Just like we want to expand the diversity of, I guess, SCA. I want to extend the diversity of what metrics you get on a scholarship by. You know, but if we go down that road,
the Caribbean, the government shouldn't be responsible for that.
That's my thing too. If we're gonna go down the road of
all government scholarships, the school should determine not at secondary school level, at a college level, they should determine who comes into their schools totally.
I would prefer, personally, if the government's hands weren't in scholarships, but I don't think that scholarships should just vanish. I think that the public should take up the brunt. I think that institutions should look to fund more students. I think you should have much more external scholarships. It's difficult in Trinidad's economic climate to say that paying for somebody to go to school, which could cost, in my example, to go to my school, that's what? I was like $1.2 million. The cost benefit of paying for somebody to go to school as a private company, it don't really add up now.
Yeah.
I think definitely you should reduce the number of scholarships and change the criteria, right? Make the criteria an application process. Not everyone, anybody could qualify for a scholarship. You have to tell me why you want a scholarship, what you plan to do with a scholarship, how you could benefit Trinidad with the scholarship. Because if the government is giving you money, they want to make sure that their investment pays off, and they want you to prove to them why you deserve their money. Yeah. I think that they should do that, you know, and tell them, like, if you're an athlete, I think that should factor into the equation. If you have dreams, I don't think we should get rid of totally of the academic performance side. Because
but
I think that only relying on it, especially an exam, that's such a waste of time, right? I think that relying on that as a metric is poor.
Yeah.
Is very poor. So that's the funny thing, and it's this guy CIC and their graduation. he said, last on the list, I would like to what it was, boy? Thank CXC for taking our dreams and aspirations, crumpling it up and throwing it as far as it could. I mean, I'm misquoting him most likely, but he literally said words to that effect.
Wow.
You know, because by relying so much on education and like literally when the CXC messes up, it's real repercussions, you know, because we base our scholarships on that. We base what university you're going to get into. It's just so much riding on the exam for them to get away with this. You know. Sorry.
Yeah, boy, wow, stress, boy. I wish that somebody had good I wish us to have somebody with solutions to come up with these things.
I think to have solutions, I think the problems need to be more explicitly stated. What we're given is like our observations of the problems. If they were like hard data analysis on the problems, you know, which is one of my dreams.
But Trinidad has none of.
Yeah, we have data, not a lot of analysis on the data. And even if you have analysis on the data, it's like maybe one or two sources. And I think for if you state in a problem, I think you need to be able to see the problem through multiple, I guess, data-oriented industries, right? Like, plenty of people need to see the problem for the problem to like flesh out itself, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not enough for a statistic to say that 20% of people failing. If 3 statistics say 20% of people failing, then it's real, you know. That's just my personal thing. So yeah, I just think, Michael, I think that the public needs to foot the bill for a lot of these things. I mean, again, it's gonna sound hypocritical because I wouldn't want to pay that. like honestly, for me, I don't think my family could afford education for all of us. You know, so I think it is a beautiful thing that we have going. But then when problems like this arise, who are we to complain? You know, we don't foot the bill. We don't take responsibility for a lot of the things.
So you think for the problems associated with, let's say, these metrics, it more so relies on the individual to determine how he shapes his destiny in the future.
I think so. I think so.
So on the school and the state.
Yeah, because then what happens is that the state determines, like, I guess, the society's value structure by putting such a high value. When you fund something completely, when the government funds something completely, what they're literally saying is that they think that this is the most important thing, and they think that everybody has to go through this space. So education, for example, by funding education fully, they're literally saying that everybody needs an education, and education is the only way forward. By giving out 400 scholarships, they're saying everyone needs to try to get a scholarship.
And then they get to decide on the criteria of who gets to go what school.
Yeah, and then who falls through
and who
the
doesn't
cracks?
and who falls through the cracks.
People who are not so academically inclined, you know? And fair enough, I think education is valuable.
The other things, academically inclined is kind of weird because there's a limited amount of subjects being tested on.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe and I think that by putting a lot of the responsibility on the public can figure out their own value system. If they realize, I can't afford to do 20 subjects, right? Let me just see if I could do 7. Let me see if I can harness my prowess in football, right? See if I could get if like ideally I would not have to sacrifice my football in school. Like if my scholarship was also dependent on my football in secondary school, I would have taken it that much more serious. But because it's only CAPE that determines if I get a scholarship, I had to put football at a backseat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that a lot of people who have talents outside of academics, you put it on a serious backseat when you have probably more potential, because, by doing all those other things while everybody else is pursuing academics, it doesn't become so, I guess, concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the biggest problems we have right now in Trinidad is that job availability is next to none.
Yeah, the diversity of job availability.
It's trash.
But here's the weird thing. We moved from a space in colonial times where we didn't have the government deciding, changing the criteria. Well, when the government changed the criteria of what it meant to enter a secondary school, it allowed for more accommodation of different people.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that we move from that area to an area where the stipulations which the government put on entering into the secondary school is stifling creativity? The same thing that allowed for more accommodation is now stifling individuals.
That's
so
true.
how do you account for that?
Well, I think that that's a difficult question, because
put in the comments.
Yeah. If you all have any ideas on this, please put it in the comments. Anyway, so this is a nice conversation, Michael. I think that this is postable. How are you feeling?
It's all right, bro. It's all right.
It's
you have been in it, so you
true.
have to post it.
True. I enjoyed this. I think that this is more my niche. I think that education in general is something I'm going to be interested in. I'm going to try to, see if I can target subject areas on my university that will help make more informed decision about my education system. I'm sure in the next 5 years, I'm going to look back and say, look, you were talking around nonsense in this podcast.
For sure.
For
sure.
And I think that's fine. That's fine, because this is where my head at is now. We'll see where we go from here. Anyway, guys, so that's it for the podcast. I want to, whoever reached this far, please share. I was supposed to say that at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
I expected more organic growth from the channel than anything. I mean, it's there, but guys, if you think that what I'm doing is cool, please share. If you find what I'm doing is garbage, let me know privately. Don't make me out, please. I'm a humble fella. You could approach me.
You can make me out in person.
You can make me out in person. That's fine. But yeah, lovely conversation, Michael.
Yeah, bro.
See you all in a bit.